That Resolution 976 pertains to New York City's divestment from nuclear weapon producers. It also suggests that New York City should sign the ICANN Cities Appeal and support the U.S. government to sign and ratify the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So 976 resolution is more binding in action, particularly the very strong action of nuclear divestment. As you heard Councilmember Drom say in the press conference, there are only $500 million out of a $200 billion pension fund. So we think that that ask is, pretty reasonable. And we also know that if New York City divested its pension fund from nuclear weapon producers, that would send a strong message not only to Washington but the world. It should also be noted that several other financial institutions have already divested of nuclear weapons. The Norwegian People's Pension Fund and also Deutsche Bank. These are large financial institutions that have taken the stand to divest of nuclear weapons, and we draw our inspiration from a project called Don't Bank on the Bomb, which is part of ICANN out of the Netherlands. And the Don't Bank on the Bomb report really proves that in the case of nuclear weapons divestment, you have a stronger financial returns when you don't invest in military and war. So, specifically, a company like Boeing right now is tanking because of the controversy over the latest airliner that they had tried to introduce. So, that's not a really dependable stock. But we shouldn't be speaking about financials, we should be speaking about morals. And it is morally unethical to invest in nuclear weapons for the pension funds, for example, first responders who would be the first line of attack should nuclear weapons be used on our city. It would be the first responders, the firemen, the police officers that would go into the radiological hellfire. So why invest in something that is already endangering your life? The bill, Bill 1421, is about forming an advisory committee to make the New York City nuclear weapon-free zone more robust, to use the mayor's office to do research, to organize projects that could really fortify our nuclear weapon-free zone status, but specifically to look at the old Manhattan Project former sites, which are contaminated still and might be in need of remediation. So it's not only about sending a message to the world about taking action for nuclear abolition, but it's also taking care of present-day New Yorkers and future generation New Yorkers, because there could still be contamination within our city limits due to the Manhattan Project's original intent of building the nuclear weapons that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. New York City was declared a nuclear weapon-free zone in 1983 after the march on Central Park, where 1 million New Yorkers and people across the country really came to make their voices heard about the elimination of nuclear weapons. Shortly after that, New York City enacted a very progressive nuclear weapon-free zone. We're seeing the need to reboost that. The Trump administration is currently signed on to over $1 trillion in modernization efforts for the nuclear arsenal, and also bringing back land-based missiles and other things that the Trump administration is seeing and calling usable nuclear weapons, leveraging the deaths of millions of people for their foreign policy, in the fallacious idea that this could be some way that we could conquer and occupy. You can't occupy a radioactive landscape, and if we tip into the abyss by using nuclear weapons again for the first time on people in cities in 75 years, then God only knows what the survival rate of our planet would be at that point. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists have said it's 100 seconds to midnight. That's the shortest time in the doomsday clock that has ever been. And Rachel Bronson, the president, said we must act urgently and immediately. And when she says we, it's not just elected politicians, it's ordinary ordinary citizens like ourselves. So we hope New York City will follow in the footsteps of some of the great New Yorkers that you heard today, you heard of today, and that we can carry on the tradition of speaking truth to power and making legislation that brings about actual change within the landscape of nuclear weapons. Yes, this would be a nuclear weapon free zone advisory committee. Yes. And unfortunately, we're getting early news that the de Blasio administration is likely to push back on it. So this won't be easy to pass, but we believe that with growing momentum and the movement, that we will. No, the committee would be issued from the mayor's office. It would be a committee from the mayor's office. And that committee would seek to be a robust nuclear weapon free zone advisory committee that could do things like research old sites that were involved in the Manhattan Project. I would like to see us develop a curriculum for citywide use for high school students to understand New York City's connection to the nuclear arms race, the Manhattan Project, why we have a special responsibility to see its end. We have a veto-proof majority on the bill, 1421. So it's going to see, we have to get it through committee. That's up to City Council. You know, the mayor is giving a soft no. You know, we need city councilors to push back on the mayor. But I'd just like to note that last week, Mayor Bill de Blasio was at the Brooklyn Academy of Music for the commemoration of Dr. King's national holiday, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And Mayor Bill de Blasio said at that gathering that one of the things that people forget to remember is that Dr. King was against militarism. And it was what he considered the triple evils, the evil of racism, the evil of poverty, and the evil of militarism, and the interconnectedness of all three of those. And so our mayor waxed lyrical in front of an overflow audience at the Brooklyn Academy of Music about Dr. King's heroic anti-militarism, but then dares to push back on a committee that would oversee a robust reinvigoration of our nuclear weapon-free zone. Those two don't add up. He's either lying about one or lying about the other. And, you know, he needs to come clean. He's either for peace and social justice, which would make him a proponent of the legislation before City Council, or he's just full of a lot of hot air and saying things that he wants people to hear him say. Stand up and be counted.
So do you have any idea on why he is pushing back against the bill?
Because of cost.
Cost?
Yeah. But I would venture to say financial cost is not commensurate with the monumental loss of life, culture, heritage, artwork, history that would happen if one nuclear bomb exploded over New York City, destroying everyone and everything we love. There's no cost that you can put on that. And the cost is minimal because the advisory committee members would be joining on a voluntary basis. And if there's research that needs to be done that protects New Yorkers to see if we need to remediate former nuclear weapon sites that are here in our city, then that is a cost worth paying for present and future generation New Yorkers.